Hello. I'm going to make my usual speech. I would like you to fill up the empty seats in the lower amphitheater, please, because we're not going to start until the seats are filled up in the first 3 rows here. I think it's terrible to look at empty seats. I don't like it. Because today we have as our guest Gloria Gelfand, which I will tell you a little about her. Are you listening? Come, sit down, pay attention. Because you will never have the opportunity to meet someone that has the knowledge, the insight, the instinct, and the feeling for fashion like Gloria, and she's going to pass it on to you. So out of respect, the word respect, you should look up in the dictionary and memorize it. Please fill up the empty seats. I would appreciate it. I'm talking to you like I'm a mother. Lower seats. Up there, fill the lower seats. Okay, have you had a good weekend, this miserable weekend? It's rainy weather, clouds. It was horrible. But today we will have a wonderful, wonderful class because you will have knowledge passed on to you that you won't get anywhere else. But before I start that, because I'm so excited to have Miss Gelfand here, that I can't wait till I pass the podium on to her. But first of all, there are a few questions I know for our class that have to be attended to. And that is, next week, as you know, you've received the procedures for the exam. We have the 20 multiple question exam next week, which is based on, don't raise your hand yet till I finish, then you can ask me. It's based on all the guest speakers we had. That's why I told you to seriously take notes, and notes would mean the background of each guest speaker. If you made shorthand notes, it'll be based on their thinking, what they said, who they worked for, etc., etc., etc. I won't make it difficult. I'll make an easy test for you, but it'll be tricky. ABC, multiple choice, okay? Next week. And follow the instructions I gave you. The instructions I gave you, yes. You're all going to sit 1 seat apart, not real. Well, we'll see when you get here, because there are 94 students taking the test. And I'm not going to waste time. You read this carefully. I know you don't like to read, but please read it and follow it. Next week when you come, I'll go over it once again, so there's no misunderstanding, all right? And I have 7 students I want you to be aware of who have more than 2 absences, okay? And you know that when you have more than 2 absences, you lose a half a point in your final grade. So try not to have more. Some of the students here had 3 or 4. Your names are here if you want to go over it. And there are many students who have not handed in any field trips. The deadline, it will affect when the date you submitted goes in the record book. I'll have to think over. Come down to the lower amphitheater, those new students that came. Come down here, fill in the seats in the lower. Way down here, right in the front. And that's that. And last week, I was, as you know, shocked that many of you did not know who Katie Murphy was. So you received an assignment of 15 American icons, famous designers, that you're supposed to research and hand in. I only received 1. And you know that Friday is the last day that you can submit the report on your research on your 15 American designers, because this will help you. You may think, well, why do we have to know about these people? They're from the past. Well, the past is your present and your future. Always remember that. Your past is your present and your future, okay? Because the more you know about your business, if you have a passion for it, the more successful you have a chance of becoming. So that's important. Now, what else was I think that's all I have to. Any questions? There was a hand up there. Hello? That young lady who's writing, didn't you raise your hand? You changed your mind? Did you get your question answered? Oh, okay. Any others? Okay. You can always come to room A639. I'll sit and talk to you if you have questions, because I want to, it's already almost quarter after. I want Miss Gelfand to take me off this podium. And just, I gave you her bio. Read it carefully. It's heavenly. It's wonderful, because Gloria Gelfand is a vibrant legend in our fashion business. I'm not going to read this because it'll take too long. I want you to study it. Now, Gloria Gelfand has guided the course of several international fashion companies, endless, in the United States and abroad. She has held the key executive position at such major fashion houses as Givenchy, USA, Escada, USA, Rena Lang, Salvatore Ferragamo, and Louis Theroux, and many, many others, which she will tell you about. With it, she has extensive successful experience in merchandising and marketing, from the moderate to the designer end of the market. She has accomplished several firsts in the industry, which I want Gloria to tell you about. And I'm going to turn the podium over to my dear, dear friend, Gloria Gelfand, that I'm so proud of to have here. Thank you, sweetheart.
Just have to adjust this. Does everybody hear me?
You can take that out.
No, it's fine. No, I'm fine. First, I want to say that this meeting is an opportunity for me to talk about the things that I feel are important. You're sitting here because you're going to be entering an industry that, as far as I'm concerned, and I've been in it all my life, 66 years. So you're entering an industry that I have a great deal of love for, and more than love, respect. And I started so way back at the very beginning that although this is not going to be an autobiography, I hate autobiographies, and they're boring, and I have no intentions of boring you with an autobiography. But I am going to tell you about some of the things that I think were interesting and inspiring, and in some ways, the beginning. So I'm going to start by saying that I was a very lucky woman. Lucky because I married the best support system that ever lived, but lucky because my first job was with a mentor. And not just an ordinary mentor. I went to work for a man who was an arthritic cripple that could hardly stand up. He traveled in freight cars from a 7-day Adventist home in Medford, Oregon, when he graduated high school. And that's how he became a cripple. He was the most brilliant marketing man I have ever known in my life, and I have lived through and with and associated with some of the best that there is. Bert Camberg, after he hired me, and of course, this was 1944, so ladies and gentlemen, in 1944, the job was steno, bookkeeping, sketching, selling, and modeling when you have to. The product that he carried in his little agency in New York was 2 products. The first one was Hirsch Weiss Manufacturing Company of Portland, Oregon. It was the manufacturer of the first ready-to-wear ski wear in the world. When Harold Hirsch, the son, graduated Dartmouth, he told his father, "I will not enter this business to make these men's hunting jackets and canvas products unless you bring Otto Schneebs, the ski director from Dartmouth, to Portland, Oregon, and I can open up and produce ready-to-wear ski wear." So that was the beginning. And that's what I walked into when I took the job. But there was something about Camberg, and he proved it within the first 3 weeks that I was there. He called me into his office, and he said, "You are not going to register for courses at NYU. I am going to pay for your education, and the courses that you will take will be completely different from courses that anybody else would even think of taking." The first course, and I promise you, I am not kidding when I say, to this very day of my life, I use it. It was at the Engineering Society of New York, which was on 39th Street, right down the street from where we were. And the course was called Time and Study Methods in Prioritizing Time. It was a 6-week course. It was fantastic. It taught me the most important words: what comes first. And over the years, I have absolutely attempted and tried to make sure that that's the way I lived my life, my personal life and my business life. What comes first? And you really have to be very definitive about it. The second course was at the Sales and Advertising Management Club. It was over on 59th Street at the Yale building. I was not only a young woman, but I was the only woman. The only other classmates I had were the men who were not in World War II. And so they were in their 40s and 50s and nice, wonderful men, but those were my classmates. The first night of the course, a man in front of the room who was going to be the speaker was about, very tall. He was about 6'4". He stood up, and in his right hand, he had Van Camp's beans. And in his left hand, he had new, improved Van Camp's beans. The man, he said, "In the first quarter of this year, we have quadrupled our business on," he's holding up, "the new, improved beans." A man a couple of rows behind me said, "How can you improve on beans?" And he very straight-faced said, "Who improved the beans?" My first major lesson in branding of product. I guess my first major lesson in how to advertise product. It was just a label. It was an incredible course. It lasted about it was a 6 to 7 week course. And then it was time to finish the night classes, and because we were going to start the summer semester. The brand new school opened up in September of 1944. I was in the first class, one of the first people to enter the new school. My course was, and this is the most important thing I'm going to tell you tonight, my course was socioeconomic research into demographics. And demographics, for all of you entering this industry, you're going to find that it's the most important word. It's not only the most important word, it's the most important area that you must learn. And Bert Camberg, behind his desk on a shelf, was I would call it a just a big note tacked up. And what it said in big letters was, you don't know what you don't know, and you don't even know that you don't know it. And for all of you, I'm going to say that the synonym for that sentence is exactly the word I used before, demographics. Demographics is what makes our world go round. Demographics is determining the who is she. And then the other three words after the who is she is compared to whom. I'm a big believer in words. So the first word that I always start with, because it's the most important word, and it's the word of all of you, it's called people. People make your life. People are the ones that become the opportunity for you to create your credibility. People is who you must associate with and live with and join with, do your business with, and it's extremely important that you recognize that people is the first important word. The second one is called excitement. In this industry, and believe me, I've been through 3 recessions. Nothing as bad as this one, but 3 recessions prior to this one. And so excitement becomes extremely important. It's your belief in what you are doing and what you feel strongly about that creates the reason you get up in the morning and get dressed and want to go to work. Excitement. And it better be there for whatever product you get involved with, whether retail or wholesale. The next word, and I guess I love this one very much, is called challenge. You must feel challenged, because challenge is the only thing that will make you move on. Move on. I say that because in the course of my career, I have had situations that were very difficult. Situations where, as a woman, a young woman in our industry, yes, you could be the secretary, and yes, you could be the receptionist, and yes, you might even get a job selling in a showroom. But at 23 years old, I was already the Eastern sales manager for the company that was Hirschweiss, but in 1946, the literal translation of the name became White Stag. So it was White Stag, the company that in 1946, I got a box on my desk and opened it up and said, what in the world am I looking at? It was made out of denim. It was all curled up. It had copper stitching and copper riveting. And guess what? It was the first female blue jean in the world. The first female blue jean. It wholesaled for $2.87, and it retailed for $5.75. But prior to the wholesale and the retail, it was, what am I going to do with this? I didn't even know what I was looking at. But I had a friend, and a few friends, but this one was a special friend. She was the editor at that time. First she was at Glamour, and then she went to a magazine that was an additional, it was a very small magazine, but it was a wonderful one because it was appealing to a different group of people than Mademoiselle, and it was called Charm magazine. Her name was Nanny Moore, and unfortunately we lost her. She passed away last week. But Nanny Moore was marvelous to me because she was the one who would give me my editorials on ski wear. And so I called Nanny and I said, I have this thing and I don't know what to do with it, and I would like you to look at it. Well, that thing ended up on the front cover of Charm magazine. The young woman was sitting on a fence. She was wearing a man's white shirt. She had on a straw hat. She had a pipe in her hand, and number 653, the first female blue jean in the world, which I sold to Lord & Taylor to cover the credit, did 350 dozen by the end of December of 1946. So the number one item of the world, the biggest demographic item of the world, was born in March 1946. The following year, White Stag came out with the first multiple separates in the world. Nobody ever heard of multiple separates. The short, the Jamaica short, the Bermuda short, the clam digger, the calf skinner, the deck trouser, the captain's hat, the captain's jacket. The stores didn't even know what they were buying. So this then put me in another situation. I had to go to all these fabulous retailers around the country to teach the salespeople not only what the product was, but what to do with it. It had no ambiance as far as other product. They didn't know where to put it. They didn't know where to place it. The normal store, whether it was the United States or Europe or anywhere, if you went into that store in 1947, you saw a rack of skirts. You saw a rack of blouses. You saw sweaters on a wall based on size, small, medium, large, etc. But there was no such thing as a collection of multiple separates. So here were these retailers. Yes, they were buying it. Yes, it was different. But then I did, and I have the plaque to prove it, 160,000 air miles in the United States that year, going to every single retailer that bought the product around the country to teach the salespeople what it was all about. The biggest classification in the world has this stupid name, sportswear, because White Stag was a ski wear company. And the name has never changed. This is called sportswear. Is this sportswear? I don't think so. But multiple sportswear got born, 1947. Then, of course, other companies came along and started to copy it, but White Stag was a phenomenon. But I learned something, and I'm going to pass that on right now. I learned that the most important people that a manufacturer has at retail is the salesperson in the store. With all due respect to a very dear friend of mine sitting here, who helped me to become successful, because everything I got involved in and every company I got involved in, he was right there for me. My friend, an instructor here at FIT, Bill Lynch. And Bill Lynch will say I'm right when I say the salesperson today especially is earning diddly squat for salary across the country, specialty stores and major stores. She lives and breathes on commission. So companies that do trunk shows, which began way back in 1947, called, at that point, I didn't know what to call it. I called it a staff training clinic. But the staff training clinic became a trunk show when I went to work for Sport Tempos in 1957. We had to change the name. We had to make it viable. And the trunk show today, which gives the retail salesperson the extra money in her pocket on commission, is the most important brand that they commit themselves to. So when you get involved with a product and you build the product and you understand how to market the product, understand that the most important thing you can do with that product is to reach that retail salesperson in the store. Amen. And Bill says, amen. But it is the truth. And particularly, it is the truth today. In this particular economy, the companies that are going and doing the retail personal presentations, the designers that are picking themselves up and going across the country. I have a client called Lafayette 148 where the designer goes across the country, not just to the Neiman Marcus and the Saks Fifth Avenue. He goes to the small specialty store. He goes to the bins in Williamsburg, Virginia. He does $400,000 worth of business in 2 days. Why? Because he is involved with those salespeople. And they know that they're going to go home with those extra dollars in their pocket at the end of the week to feed their family. So personal appearances, trunk shows, every single thing that can be done to make it more important for the retail sales clerk to earn more money is going to brand your product and make it important and make it grow. The next thing I'm going to say is extremely important because it has to do with today's world, and it's the internet. Product that is being sold on the internet now has become a very sophisticated business. Very, very. The same Lafayette 148 I talked about a minute ago, my client, they will do $4 million on the internet in just this spring season. It's that big. But it can only be big if the manufacturer understands that he can't just put basic product on the internet. If you get involved with product that's going to have a website, make sure that there's fashion that's being shown. Make sure that it's going to be exciting. Make sure that it's going to say to the customer out there the word that is so important, want. Want. The world we live in now is based on 2 words, want and need. Want is very important. And I'm going to say that as far as the product on the internet, there's 3 words. Here's me again with my words. Okay, here are the words. Continuity of fit. The only way that a product goes from year to year and builds in importance is called continuity of fit. Trunk shows are built on continuity of fit. Absolutely. Absolutely, 100%. Because the sample that the manufacturer is bringing to the trunk show could be a size 8, could be a size 6. When the customer has purchased a size 12 and it fit, she knows that she could come back to trunk show after trunk show. She knows that she could get on the web and she can order that 12 because that particular label has continuity of fit. Probably one of the most important things besides the quality of make and the excitement of the product is the continuity of fit. So when you get involved in this industry and you are dealing with people beyond the creative, beyond the merchandising, the technical, make sure that that production head or those production people understand, very important, understand that you have to change your sloper for the different fabrics. Because when you have a production manager that doesn't understand that, then you have a company that will fail. So it's not just the who you will be, the designer, the creator, the merchandiser, the advertising person, the PR person. It's that back room. And that back room has to stand up in a very sophisticated manner to everything else. It is that important. Believe me. I want to mention some things that I feel were also very important in my background that helped me to understand another part of our world. In 1953, the Puerto Rican government invited me, my company, White Stag, to come over and do a charity show for the opening of the Caribe Hilton Hotel in Tel Aviv. The charity show was very important because it was for a very important charity, a Catholic charity at that time, but a very important one. So we put on a fashion show, but Eastern Airlines took 128 fashion editors in the plane, along with me and the photographers and the models. Life magazine, after we came home, gave White Stag, a front cover and 4 inside pages. It was the first of the many different charity shows that I was involved in. But it was the beginning to understand that this was another world and another way of life, and that it was going to have to be exploited in an important way. Well, that was 53. In 1958, it was an incredible situation for me. The Public Relations Department of the Israeli government reached out. I was at that point of my life in the first multiple sportswear full collection bridge line called Sport Tempos USA. And we were invited to go to Israel and to put on a fashion show for their very important charity called Ilan Shil. Ilan Shil was the name of the president of the Renault car, but was also the name of the major charity for infantile paralysis. And we raised the equivalent at that fashion show. Of course, I had to have people that were translating for me. And it was a beautiful show. It was put on at the Hotel Dan. And it was the first decade celebration for Israel, which was very special also for me. And then we toured. We raised about, it was the equivalent of about what had been about $250,000 at the show. But then we toured Israel. What was Israel? A very little, tiny little country, practically a nothing country in its first decade. But we got as far as Jerusalem, and so we got as far as the wall. And we took, the photographers that I had with me, took a tremendous amount, it was 40,000 square feet of film. And then it was edited and played back at State of Israel Bond rallies in the United States, and it raised another $500,000 for the Israeli Ilan Shil. So that was another very rewarding experience, but it also gave me an opportunity to do something that I didn't think I would ever do, and that was to understand the other countries that were moving in on producing fashion product. And for Israel at that time, it was the very beginning, and I had an opportunity to witness it. In 1961, I was invited by the United States government, along with one other person, to go to the U.S. Embassy in London and be part of a trade show where we were going to attempt to establish the influential business of selling U.S. product to Europe. It was a week that wasn't. We accomplished nothing. But my boss called me and said, "There's something you have to see, and I think I would like you to go and take a look at it. So you will travel to Milan, and then you will take a train to Florence. And you will be met in Florence by a man called Umberto Severi. Umberto Severi will take you to his home in Tuscany and to his factory, and you will be introduced to a knitting machine that I have read about, but we can't afford because that machine costs $275,000. each machine. Well, I saw for the first time the machine that made my Escada do $400 million worth of business in 10 years. The machine is called the Shima Seika. If you have never seen it and you don't know it, it is the most unbelievable machine. It started out in its life in England by a company called Sears Limited. And the machine in England originally was called a Moratronic. After World War II, the Japanese got the machine and computerized it, and it became the Shima Seika. The Shima Seika can do 28 individual needles. Therefore, it could do 28 individual colors of yarn in one sweater with no seams. The machine is about 12 feet long and about not more than 3 feet wide. And there's probably only about 4 of them in the United States. 4. But the people who have them in Europe, of course, I took on the Escada job. I went to work for Escada because I saw 6 Shima Seika machines. That did it. I wasn't going to go to work for a German company. I really wasn't. My father's entire family, my grandfather, grandmother, 7 brothers, all the wives, all the children were washed out in Auschwitz. So to get me to a German company was pretty tough, I can tell you. And they called me and called me and called me, and it wasn't until I met Margareta Lai and fell in love with her that I decided to, yes, I would think about going there. And when I walked into the factory on my first day to be introduced to the people, and they walked me through the knitting plant. They didn't walk me through the front door. They walked me through the knitting plant. And I saw 6 Shima Seika machines. And I turned around to the young woman who had picked me up at the airport, and I said, I just took this job. And she said, that's what Mr. Lai said you were going to say. And of course it was immediately in a recession. Escada was brought into the United States in 1982. We opened our first collection, and it was a recession. But, and here's the lesson, it's called niche. Niche. Yes, it was a designer sportswear product. Yes, we had competition, but our competition was Calvin Klein, Ralph Lauren, Anne Klein, at that time, Anne Klein, the original collection, Perry Ellis. They were making very beautiful designer sportswear, but not one single one of them had a Shima Seika machine. So I brought not the whole collection of sportswear from Escada, I brought the sweaters. I brought 30 sweaters. And I offered them in as many as 3 and 4 colors, patterns of every sweater. And the very first season in the recession, we did 19,000 units. 19,000 units. We opened up every good specialty store in the country. We opened up Neiman Marcus big time. Took a couple of years to open up Saks, but we opened up Neiman Marcus big time. And we were very much in business, very, very much in business. And why? I'm going to go back to that word, niche, niche, niche. The most important word. You got to find a separate niche. What's not there? What is not out there? Where is there a need? So now, I said before that I talked to you about want. I'm going to give you a couple of words to describe want first, and then I'll get to need. Want, 2 very important words, because want is difficult. Want is difficult. There's an ambivalence about people spending money for clothes. Today's women's wear says it, no question. Want is revive. Revive. Let's say you're the customer. You have bought this beautiful outfit, this gorgeous jacket. You have lived through minimalism. We had 8 years of minimalism, where product became nothing more than what I'm wearing now. A jacket with a dumb button, a pant, a skirt, minimalism. And minimalism was everything from the Helmut Langs and the Calvin Kleins and all the way down the line in price. Minimalism. And we own it. It's in our closet. We bought it. It's there. It hasn't died. It hasn't disappeared. It hasn't been moth-eaten. It's there. So in the last couple of years, what do you think we were selling? We were selling Revive. People were walking into the stores, young people, and 35-year-olds and 50-year-olds, and saying, I have to revive what I own in my closet. And so the first thing they did, and very importantly, I must say, they absolutely brought back a business that was not in existence of any measure prior to 4 years ago, and that was the dress. The dress. Nobody had a dress. And so all of a sudden, the dress business took off. And the dress business blossomed into a tremendous business at every price point. And it still is. It still is. What does it represent? Want. I don't own that. That's what I want. So Revive, the beautiful piece to put inside of the basic jacket, the beautiful piece to excite my wardrobe that's hanging there in that closet. And the other word, along with Revive, very important word, rejuvenate. The word was rejuvenate your wardrobe in a different way. So that was want. That is want. And it is want today as I speak. And now let's go to need. Need is very, very strong in two areas. Need is based on demographics. When you have 2.7 million weddings in the United States this year, and then you have 625,000 bar mitzvahs and bat mitzvahs this year, along with all the other social occasions, social occasion clothing is need, because we don't go to the party with the family wearing the same gown or the same dress. We have to have a new one. So social occasion clothing is still doing well. It's continuing to do well, and today it proves it. This also was today's women's wear. So I'm going to hold it up. It says, here's the good news. And on 3 pages of today's Women's Wear Daily, it is quoting from the major designers, not just here in the United States, but across the world, all saying their business is good, their business is doing well, their business is functioning, everything is terrific. They are all selling social occasion clothing. So if you're ready to graduate soon and you want to get involved in something that's doing extremely well and it's going to continue to do extremely well, that's the first need, social occasion clothing. The second one takes us all the way down to the other end of the demographics. We are now talking about a very important need, and it is also registered in the tremendous percentage of babies that have been born in the last 3 years. So what is important there and selling? Infants' clothes, and 1-year-old and 2-year-old and 3-year-old. The stores are not even equipped to handle it correctly. The only store in the city of New York that is doing a good job with it happens to be Lord & Taylor. It's an entire floor. But beyond Lord & Taylor, there is no other major presentation of what I just said in a major store. Isn't that sad? That's not understanding the demographics. I want to just cover a few more things to tell you that I feel very strongly about. I think it's extremely important as you move in your life into this industry to be very careful about where you stay in a job. Very quickly you will determine when you have taken a job who you're reporting to. In my life, in the 66 years, believe me, I have had a few situations that were very difficult. They were people who, number one, I was a woman. What does she know? Okay. Number two, it was insecurity because I did know considerably more than that person that was in charge. The insecurity led to jealousy, and the jealousy led to me being verbally abused. Of course I left those companies. Of course I didn't stay. But my point is, be careful. Don't stay anywhere unless you see that the person you are reporting to understands fully and appreciates the who you are. That is very, very important, what I have just said. Very important. The last thing I'm going to say before I walk away from this podium, I think I've said enough already. You want to also understand in the demographics something that is extremely important, and believe me if I say that there is not a retailer that will ever negate this statement when I say it. Here are very big companies into the 300, 400 million that are having enormous difficulty today. Enormous. They are companies that have been catering to a huge percentage of the American woman. And the baby boomer, 70% of which, of the 49 million, were born between 1946 and 1950. 70%. Quick arithmetic tells you they're in their 60s. Not that there's anything wrong with doing product and making product and believing in that woman. But remember that idealistically her lifestyle has changed. Therefore, the whole conceptual situation of what she needs in her wardrobe has dramatically changed. And companies that don't recognize that don't realize that they're still catering to that baby boomer, are in trouble. And one of the reasons they're in trouble is because, number one, it's not even a question of refocusing product. They could bring in the biggest designer in Europe, the biggest one, Gloria. But if they don't put his name on the label, they will never get that daughter to buy that product. The daughter doesn't buy her mother's label except for Chanel. That's fact. Fact. And as I said before, there is not a single retailer that I tell that to that will ever negate it. Because it's true. Chanel, that's it, the only one. So what should they do? If I was the president of Ellen Tracy, I would get myself a name designer, but instead of just letting them design the product in the back room, I'd put their name on the label. Their name on the label. Or I would start a brand new division with a different name, because it's not working for them by keeping the original label. And I must tell you, that is not confined to an Ellen Tracy or a St. John or even to my baby that I brought into this world, a Scotta. Everybody's got the same problem. They've got to deal with it and understand it. It's wonderful to be devoted to your label. It's wonderful to understand who you've been selling with that label. But Remember the demographics. She gets a day older every day. Every day. And unless you are ready to refocus, to bring in Regeneration X, we have a funny story together, Mr. Bill Lynch and I, about Regeneration X. The big article about Regeneration X came out in August of 2003. It was a statistical analysis so well done on this customer who was the daughter and son of the baby boomer, and that there was nothing out there that was catering to them. They were no longer in college. They were 25. They had either entered the workforce or maybe they got married and they were ready to start a different life. But the point is, they were no longer just wearing that blue jean and that blue jean jacket. They were needing clothes. Nobody was saying anything to them at all, except the area, the one area that sprung up like crazy and is still doing incredibly well, called contemporary. But contemporary is also a physiological statement. And so another quote, statistical fact that I'm going to give you, 62% of all American women over the age of 30 in this country are size 12 and over. 62% are size 12 and over. Now that's a pretty horrendous statement, but it's fact. So while you're not going to recognize it at FIT, obviously, you're not going to recognize it perhaps on the streets of New York, not even on the streets in Chicago or San Francisco or LA, but it exists, and we are a country of multi-millions. So you have to be prepared with what I just told you, because it's all part of recognizing who you want to be, where you want to go, the kind of product you want to be involved in, and I have to tell you, all of this is going into my book. And if you want to hear the title of my book, picture a big word, and, A-N-D. I never had a resume. And the book will be out next year. And I wish you luck, all of you. Questions? Any question? Is there a question? Well, I guess I covered it all, didn't I? Right? Yeah. Pardon? My book? Picture the word and, big. I never had a resume. I was talking about moving forward to get that younger